It was evident that the Red Army had mustered much of their strength and were ready for the German advance. Having encountered several ambushes along the road and their vanguard rebuked several times, the Germans decided it was time to change the tactic. The vanguard force exchanged their trucks for Hanomag half-tracks that could move faster off-road, plotted a course through the forest. They would flank the Soviet defenders and rain artillery fire down on their positions. But again the Red Army was ready for them. As the scouts moved through the woods, they came upon a mechanized corps coming to greet them. This time, the Germans would set the ambush. We rolled the scenario attack-counterattack from the main rulebook and set up the terrain using the Barbarossa terrain generator. There were 4 objectives, one on the road, one in the forest, one in the open field, and one in the ruined building. The Soviets hadn't brought any scouts this time, so the Germans were free to place their scouts anywhere on the board. The 2 furthest objectives were seized, and the 231s started in ambush, awaiting the approaching armored force. The entire Panzer III squadron and a half-track carrying 2 squads entered in the German corner. They then rolled 9 orders, more than enough to activate everything. The 231s were marked as being in ambush, ready to shoot at whatever appeared in the Soviets' turn. The half-track moved up to the building and seized the objective. The infantry disembarked, ready to defend the objective if need be. 2 of the Panzer IIIs started moving towards the last objective, and within sight of any approaching enemies, while the last one started on a flanking maneuver. Lastly, the infantry adjusted their position within the building, and it was ready for the Soviets to join the battle. A T-34 and a BT-7 platoon rolled in. They rolled far more orders than they needed this turn. A BT-7 noticed the enemy but was interrupted by ambush fire. The 231 spotted the enemy, but the shot glanced off. The BT got beyond the call of duty and shot back. It hit in return, destroying the 231. Trying to get revenge, the other 231 ambushed the 2 closest BT-7s. It spotted the one on the left, but missed. The second one was also spotted, and it hit. The shot glanced off, and the crew remained unshaken. Both BT-7s returned fire, looking for a 5 to hit the 231. The T-34 trundled forward through the woods, taking advantage of its superior mobility, and took aim at the 231. It too missed. After winning the shootout with the scout car, the heroic BT-7 raced forward to take the fight to the Panzer IIIs, claiming an objective in the process. It had no problem spotting the approaching panzers and fired. But the shot went wide. The next tank tried to do better, but the result was the same. The last BT-7 raced into the woods, getting into cover and securing a good firing position. A half-track carrying 2 squads arrived in the German corner along with the forward HQ and an SD KFZ-263. The forward HQ called for artillery support, but they were busy elsewhere. The 231 made another attempt at halting the BT-7s, just needing force to hit now. Missed against the left one, but the other was hit. The small shell punched through the front armor, destroying the tank. One of the Panthers moved to take the objective. An air attack counter was pulled, but the weather prevented any planes from interfering. The other Panzer followed and scanned the woods for enemies. It spotted the hiding BT-7 and fired, but hit nothing but trees. The last Panzer moved slowly into the woods and scanned the other wood as well. It spotted the tank, but more trees were cut down, leaving the BT-7 unharmed. The newly arrived half-track joined the Panzer in its flanking maneuver. For Soviet reinforcements, 2 medium mortars arrived in the corner. And with another 10 orders, they again had more than enough. First they kept up the shooting duel, firing twice at the 231, needing force to hit. A BT-7 kept up the fight with the Panzers. It hit the front Panzer and immobilized it. The German crew passed their morale test, but no more than that. The second shot also hit and went straight through the armor. The tank hiding by the smoking wreck fired at the other Panzer. It hit on the first shot and completely destroyed it, causing another heavy blow to the German morale. The tank in the woods took aim at the 231. It rolled twice the spot and had no trouble finding a clear shot. Hit. And destroyed. Things were falling apart for the Germans, losing a third of their total battle rating for 3 shots. The T-34 moved from one wood over to the other to get a clear view of the battlefield. And the 2 mortars just moved forward, getting into the woods. With a good roll for reinforcements, the rest of the German force arrived, and they got 8 orders to work with. Artillery was requested again, and approved. The officer called up Corps Battery, needing 4 up. And 2 170mm cannons were fired in the direction of the Soviet tanks. But it was wildly inaccurate, deviating 20 inches towards the empty fields. The Panzer in the wood aimed and fired across to the other, trying to take out both enemy tanks. It spotted the BT-7, but just missed. It spotted the T-34 as well, and hit, but needed to roll above 10 to penetrate at that range. The crew was pinned. The command squad and a medium mortar disembarked from the half-track. They immediately attempted to fire at the enemy. There were problems with the communication, but with the help of the 263, the message got through. They aimed at the other wood, and the shot was very accurate. It landed near the T-34, but it was already pinned. 2 more half-tracks carrying troops headed towards the woods. and thinking the objective secure, the infantry in the house embarked again, ready to follow the others. With a good roll, the rest of the Soviet reserves arrived to kick the Germans out of the forest. But they only got 6 orders to use on all their troops. With the second 231 gun, the BT-7 could drive up and take another objective. A third objective was also seized, putting the Germans on the back foot. The NKVD detachment moved to the front and was shortly joined by 3 troop transports. The Germans rolled 13 orders and had a lot of options. They started by requesting artillery, but the priority check failed. So instead, the command squad ordered the mortar to fire into the woods again. It deviated away from the transports, and they were shielded by the tanks in the wood. The T-34 was already pinned, but the BT-7 could still be affected on a 6. The Panzer readied 2 AP shells to take care of the BT-7. It had no trouble spotting it on a 3+, but needing 5s to hit, more trees were destroyed. And the result of the second shot was exactly the same. With an unpinned tank hiding in the woods, the Germans couldn't send their half-tracks forward, so they decided to end their turn with 9 orders remaining. The Soviets got 7 orders and started reinforcing their front line. One by one, the transport started to unload before driving away. The NKVD detachment moved to take up position in the other wood, still within shouting distance of the infantry. The furthest BT-7 moved up to join the fighting and put pressure on the Germans. The infantry engaged the command squad, spotting it once, but not twice. 3 hits were scored, but the cover stopped 2 of them, and the squad was pinned. The other rifle squad did the same. They also spotted the enemy once, but got 4 hits. Two were stopped by cover again, but 2 more men went down. And with another failed morale test, the rest of the squad routed. With the last order, one of the BT-7s headed to flank the remaining Panzer III. With 1 officer gone, the Germans received 9 orders. The priority check was passed, so finally the Germans got some artillery support. The communication check was bad, but the 263 allowed a reroll. But again, the barrage was wildly inaccurate, scattering towards the German troops. Not far enough to threaten the Germans, however. 3 of the shots missed completely, and only the BT-7 was targeted, with no effect. The Panzer loaded 2 AP shells again to take care of the flanking BT-7. It spotted it. Solid hit. And it's destroyed. The ruckus caused the 263 to be a bit confused and they had to take a morale test, which it just passed. One of the half-tracks moved a bit forward and the hatches opened, infantry pouring out into the woods. The rifle squad took aim at the enemy infantry. They spotted the enemy, but managed to hit only once. The hit was good though, and the unit was pinned. They put their heads down, preventing the Germans from shooting them again. The MG team engaged the other squad and spotted them. But the hail of bullets hit nothing but vegetation. They tried again, and still only trees got hurt. Another half-track drove out into the open and attacked the unpinned infantry, but couldn't get a clear shot. The last half-track did the same. The gunner spotted some muzzle flashes and aimed for them, scoring one hit. Not only did their morale hold, but they got beyond the call of duty. They fired a 6-man rifle squad, but had some trouble spotting them at first. When they did open fire, they got 4 hits. Two of them were saved by the cover, but 2 men went down, and the squad was pinned. And with that, the Germans ended their turn. The Soviets got 9 orders, and now they had a lot of targets. The BT-7 in the woods swung its turret around towards the half-tracks, but missed both. One of the tanks in the open drove up behind a smoking wreck and sent a shell flying past Panzer III. And its companion did exactly the same, with the same result. Some orders were spent on shuffling troops around deeper in the forest. The unpinned infantry aimed to finish off the rifle squad, but the German soldiers kept their heads down. A truck swung around to disembark another infantry unit in the wood. They immediately tried to engage the German infantry, but the rifle squad hid too well. The NKVD detachment moved into position to aid in the fighting, but they couldn't see the Germans lurking in the wood. Lastly, a truck moved onto the road, ready to speed towards the last objective. 10 orders for the Germans, and the first one was used to call for artillery support again. The deviation wasn't too bad, and again 250mm howitzers fired at the Soviet infantry. 4 indirect hits in the wood, needing 3 against the infantry and 5 against the tank. The last infantry squad was rattled. The cover did nothing, leaving them pinned. The Panzer tried a shot at the BT-7 in the wood before turning to fire at one of the approaching tanks. The one in the wood was too well hidden, but the other one was good. But the shell flew into the blue yonder. The MG team took aim at the pinned infantry unit. They had a clear shot and opened up, scoring 2 hits. The cover did nothing for the Soviets, and they panicked, routing from the battle. 1 man was shot, allowing a reroll, but it didn't make them feel any braver. A half-track moved towards the wood and fired at infantry. It spotted them and hit twice. Both went down and the rest was pinned. Another drove up and allowed its passengers to disembark. A full assault on the wood had begun. The rifle squad was ordered to assault one of the pinned units, but they got nervous. The MG team was ordered to take the other unit, and they showed some more backbone. Throwing grenades, they got 3 extra attacks and hit with 5 of them. One man was saved by cover, but being the last man standing, he ran away. A third half-track snuck around the edge of the wood, bringing its MG to bear. It spotted the remaining infantry unit, but needed 6s to hit. The Germans needed every man for their assault, decided to pull a battle counter to unpin their rifle squad. 6 orders for the Soviets. They started with a style order, but could move on with 1 tank. It moved towards the Panzer, firing area fire trying to pin it. The other tank remained stationary and fired twice at the Panzer. It was out of armor piercing and fired high explosive shells, spotting it twice. The first was a hit, but it didn't penetrate. Morale was good, and they got beyond the call of duty. The Panzer fired at both tanks. It spotted the firing tank and hit it. Destroyed. But it missed the other one. The BT-7 in the woods tried to use its MG to pin the 2 squads, needing force. It was getting a bit too hot for the truck. The NKVD detachment opened up on the MG team, but they couldn't spot them. A mortar team moved into the woods, and with that, they were done. They decided to remove some pins, but rolled 1. The Germans got 8 orders. And as usual, the first was used to call for artillery. But they were too busy to help. One half-track was sent to engage the NKVD detachment. It spotted them and needed force to hit. Three men were cut down, but their morale held. The other half-track was sent to take care of the remaining infantry squad. But this one couldn't spot its target. The Panzer tried to take out the last 2 BT-7s. It hit the closest tank, but managed only a glancing hit. Their morale held, but no beyond the call of duty this time. It then aimed at the other tank and had no trouble spotting it, needing 5 to hit. The shell punched straight through it, killing the crew. Again, the MG team was ordered to assault the enemy. They made their experience check and moved in. They rolled a 6 for a total of 11 attacks. 8 hits against the pinned unit. But the cover stopped half of those hits. A 6 for morale, but since they were inexperienced, they didn't get beyond Call of Duty. The half-track that had stayed behind by the building moved out into the field to take back their objective. It decided to stay in cover behind the smoking wrecks, so it was just out of range. The Soviets got 7 orders and were in a pickle. They tried to engage the mortars, but there was trouble with the communication. The AT gun was pushed into the woods to get a view of the half-track. It fired and scored a direct hit. Just enough to penetrate. An officer rode up in his jeep and jumped out, yelling "Ura Ura!" and all nearby infantry rushed forward to meet the German push. The NKVD detachment opened fire on the pin squad. They had some trouble spotting them at first, but then the Maxim MG rattled off a hail of bullets that scored 3 hits. Only 1 man went down and a morale check had been made. Passed, but that was it. There wasn't much more to do for the Soviets, so they shuffled some troops around, getting ready for a big counter-push. Nine orders for the Germans. The request for artillery went through, and they tried a 4-up communication test. It deviated away from the main force, and 2 170mm guns roared in the distance. The barrage rattled the truck and the detachment squad. Pinning them both. The half-track moved up, reclaiming the objective. He then tried to take out the Maxim and spotted it. It hit once and the cover did nothing, but their morale was steady. The MG team stayed still and fired at the enemy squad, but they managed to stay hidden. The half-track did the same and had a clear shot. It hit twice and killed 2 men. The last man standing decided to run away. The Panzer aimed at the BT-7 and readied 2 shells. It rolled 2 spot checks, both good. It just hit and glanced off, and the crew made their morale check. The second shell hit better and went straight through the armor. A half-track moved up to the action. An MG squad jumped out and opened fire on the small team in the woods. They didn't spot them at first, but then they fired off a salvo that scored 4 hits. Every single man got cut down. The 4 men in the rifle squad opened fire on the jeeps moving away. They managed to spot them just fine and fired twice, looking for 3s to hit. The first salvo scored 3 hits, taking out one of the cars. The second one scored another 2 hits, taking out the other car. The big counter-push never came. Seeing the front line getting cut down and the NKVD detachment getting pummeled, the soldiers in the rear lost their nerve. Panic spread through the ranks, quickly turning into a full rout. The way through the forest was now clear.